A growing number of voters flocking to Republican presidential hopeful Mike Huckabee right now. The former Arkansas governor and preacher is putting his faith front and center in a new ad airing in Iowa, where he's seeing surging support from evangelicals and a lot of others. Let's go to CNN's chief national correspondent, John King. He's watching all of this unfold. He's not your typical presidential candidate, I think, John. Maybe you disagree.
He is atypical, to say the least, Wolf. You know, you have one Republican candidate who jokes sometimes about his work in Hollywood, another who talks about his days as mayor, others are governors, others their record in the Senate, but only one of the Republican candidates talks openly, frequently, and comfortably about his relationship with God. The Cathedral of the Pines is a rural New Hampshire jewel. This biblical phrase etched in stone, more than familiar to the preacher-turned-politician from Arkansas.
I put my head on the pillow and I just want to make sure that, that the Father above is pleased. So in essence, I can say I got one client I have to please.
Mike Huckabee is the surprise of the Republican race.
I'm here today to talk about Jesus and not to talk about me.
And a real-time lesson in the often blurry line between God and politics.
If you've been a pastor, as I have, and then you run for office, there's some people that are incredibly uncomfortable with all of that. The Lord doesn't need our denial.
Huckabee is anything but uncomfortable about faith-based politics.
Faith doesn't just influence me, it really defines me.
Before he was a politician, he was a small-town Southern Baptist pastor. Not since religious broadcaster Pat Robertson sought the Republican nomination 20 years ago has someone so openly defined by faith shared the national political stage. Did you feel a calling to run, or is that an exaggeration when people say things like that?
You know, I'm not going to go around saying God wants me to be president, because last time I checked, God had not registered to vote in any of the primary states. Now, if he shows up to vote, I'm going to certainly solicit his support.
His strength in Iowa comes from evangelicals who see him as authentic, as one of their own.
Iowa has a pretty large percentage of the constituency that comes from a conservative, pro-family, pro-life perspective.
Nice to meet you.
The biggest short-term questions involve fundraising and organization. In the long term, if there is a long term, the focus on faith that works in Iowa and South Carolina could be more controversial.
There is a large minority of Americans, perhaps 25%, perhaps a third of the electorate, depending exactly how you ask the questions, that would have some real doubts about having someone with a religious background, a clergy person, in high public office.
So perhaps a tougher sell for Huckabee to sell his past as a preacher to voters, Wolf, in a general election setting. But I'll tell you what, that is a question and a sales pitch Mike Huckabee would just love to get the chance to make. Wolf?
Yeah, he's doing remarkably well in Iowa right now, John. Thank you very much for that.